Hello and welcome. You are watching the Mojo Story, and my name is Zafar Iqbal. Now, India has been moved from red to amber zone by the UK, which means that all those fully vaccinated passengers going from India to the UK need not to undergo 10 days of quarantine in a hotel. They can rather have their quarantine 10-day quarantine period in their homes or the places where they stay. Now, this is under Britain's traffic light system for international travel that has now been released. The other countries besides India are the UAE, Qatar, and Bahrain. Now, under 18 and those fully vaccinated in the UK are exempt from home quarantine, as well as those who have received 2 days of COVID vaccine in the EU and US. Uh, Now, this decision would definitely give relief to all those Indian diaspora in UK who have been demanding the easing of travel norms between the two countries. But we would want to focus on the logic that AstraZeneca, which is manufactured in the UK, is fine. All those people who take the vaccine there, they don't need any quarantine. But its Indian version, Covishield, hasn't been exempted so far. Would like to focus on this issue, and in fact, we're joined by Govindraj Ethiraj, who's a senior journalist, Dr. Sumaiya Shaikh. She's also joined us. She's a public health expert. And we're also joined by Dr. Sushmita Roychowdhury, who is from the Fortis Hospital. Now, I want to start with you, Govindraj. Basically, you tweeted today, and I want to read out that tweet. The UK says fully vaccinated visitors from India are now welcome, amber list, but neither Covishield or Covaxin are accepted. So figure how you can be a visitor from India with a UK made and administered vaccine. Well, clearly, this provokes a question. This really asks a question that why is this discrimination? On one hand, you've got AstraZeneca, which is okay. Anybody in UK can take that vaccine and doesn't need any quarantine. But why is a different yardstick being employed for Covishield in India? What do you make out of it?
Yeah,
If you can
sure. So,
unmute. Yeah.
yeah. So, thank you for having me on your show. So, the same issue arose with the European countries where they first said that they were not going to accept vaccinated passengers or people coming from countries where the or the Covishield that was not manufactured and made in UK was being used.
Yeah.
Essentially, Covishield that was being manufactured in India because and there was a reason for it that this particular Covishield had not sought the regulatory approvals in Europe before
Yeah.
at the time that they should have. So that seems
Yeah.
like a logical reason. Yeah, I understand in the UK, though I've not been following this subsequently. Uh,
Mm.
this is approved by the National Health System, the NHS, the healthcare system, but that may be not sufficient for those who are making the guidelines for travel to allow them. But I think there is a larger issue here, Zafar. I think most countries are having huge internal battles on this. They're
Yeah. Yeah.
those who want to open up travel versus those
Yeah.
who are obviously very worried. Now, people know that variants like the Delta variant have originated in India, and therefore
Mm.
maybe the fear is higher. Now, of
Mm.
course, the amber list or the red list is a good thing because it puts many countries in those buckets. And to the
Yeah.
extent that if you've taken a Covishield vaccine that's manufactured in India but in another country, then you are equally disadvantaged. It's not
Yeah.
only if you're going
Yeah.
from India.
Yeah.
Furthermore, there
Yeah.
are 5 million doses of the same vaccine which have gone from India to the UK, which have been
Yeah.
administered in the UK, which are also
Yeah.
not valid for UK
Yeah. UK
residents.
residents. Yeah. Yeah.
Correct. So I think, I mean, there is an internal battle, like I said. There is the larger challenge of saying, okay, how do we
Yeah.
open up the economy and how do we work?
Yeah.
And somewhere, my sense is that the bureaucracies are trying to find ways to, open up and yet not open up. so they feel
Yeah.
that they can manage the situation better, is my sense. And at the same time, I think we should be clear that we are getting our regulatory approvals, or applying for them, and answering all the questions that come when you apply for regulatory approvals.
Yeah. Dr. Sumaiya, I want to understand from you as well the same thing that, as we were discussing, that there are a lot many issues involved. It's not so simple and straightforward. You're based in Europe. What's the sense that you make of this? From red, we've been moved to amber. But of course, there is a catch that you have to undergo a quarantine, a home quarantine. The difference is that you're not going to the hotel now. Instead, you will have to quarantine yourself at your home. So, what's the sense that you make of this?
Yes, thank you for having me. I think the problems is with the the medicine agency, that they need to approve the AstraZeneca or Covishield, and they need to acknowledge that they are one and the same thing, whether you're saying Covishield or AstraZeneca, or any other names that the vaccine could have. I think it has
Yeah,
Vaxzevria,
yeah,
which is the other name. I think the quarantine is not a bad idea. I absolutely support that, because uh, we know that breakthrough infections can occur with the vaccine. UK has been seeing them recently, and
yeah,
we've got elsewhere in Israel and those places. So we've known that AstraZeneca has got a lower efficacy as compared to the other mRNA vaccines, which are Moderna and Pfizer
yeah,
mainly. So it is a good idea to do home quarantine. Institutional quarantine was also all right, but I suppose just to make things a little bit easier. See, no country wants to make a ban on people, but at the same time, in support of public health, they're very, very scared that a lot of Indians will come over, and the way that Indian science has been around these vaccines has not been always up to the mark. And I would say they've done a lot of effort into, into administering these vaccines, because it's not a joke to give it to so many people, because the country is so huge. But at the same time, I feel that some of the vaccine hesitancy could have been avoided by better planning. um, One thing, I'll go to Covaxin later on. One thing that is more important here is Mr. Poonawalla needs to address the concerns a little diplomatically instead of taking it straight to the EMA. Any vaccine that comes up, even though they're the same thing, everybody knows that even AstraZeneca was manufactured in India. But at the end of the day, you need to have a legitimate study that says this and this are the same thing. Because at the end of the day, they're different names. They're not the
yeah.
same names. They're manufactured in the same facility, but we need to see the study that says, look, we've got exactly the same vaccine with just these two different names. The second thing about that is there is no real world data. When we talk about India, ICMR only just published a data set a couple of days ago, but there's no real world data about either of the vaccines, Covaxin or Covishield. Now, with the UK in particular, and with other governments in Europe, but UK especially at the NHS, they publish real world data every single week. Now, by that definition, you know how the vaccines are working at the peak of the pandemic and how they're working when it's not so bad around you. So when you know that kind of assurance, that kind of support, everybody's taken AstraZeneca over there. They've taken it much earlier than before. Now people are also getting vaccines for kids. So they have little hesitancy, despite having AstraZeneca, despite having these clots and all these risks, which are very, very low. Despite having all of that, we've got uh, we've got a different problems in India in terms of having them out with the papers. I'm not expecting every single week, but at least a month, or 15 days, or whatever that is possible by the ICMR, by the government, to put out, just to give assurance and instill their faith back again into the vaccines. It is very important to do that. I think we haven't been able to do that at our front. So it could only mean that there would be more problems, even for other countries, if our own people are not accepting it in India. But having said that, Iceland has accepted Covishield. So, not every country is the same. Iceland wants people with Covishield in. And, Iceland could be slightly little liberal in that sense, but people will have a problem when the publications are not on time. I would suggest, but I don't disagree with the quarantine. I think it should absolutely be there.
Well, Dr. Sushmita, of course, if I take it to you, the discussion that we had so far, we understand that it's not so much to do with discrimination, as to say, it's more to do with lack of planning, lack of communication, lack of publications, lack of making people understand that the two are the same. Do you think that's the problem? We've been lagging in putting across the point that these two are similar and there is no difference, and it will take some more time to get that registered.
See, as a clinician, that is a very difficult point for me to say, because what you're talking about is what is going on between the European Medical Agency or the
Yeah,
UK agencies and the Indian part. So what we need, we don't know what are the requirements by them. If it is only studies and real world studies, then what Dr. Sumaiya says might be true. But what I'm
yeah,
not aware of, and whether that is what is the reason why we are lagging behind, it would be very wrong for me to say. So, but
yeah.
yes, definitely, I think it is at the level of bureaucracy to find out why we are not being given the same status as the UK AstraZeneca and try and solve those problems. I won't be able to say any more than that as a clinician.
Yes, but okay. I also wanted to ask you that as of now, today, we're having about 30,000 cases daily in UK, and in India, there are more than 40,000 cases. But given the size of India, the population of India, isn't India at a slightly better position at this point in time compared to UK? And do you think that should also be factored in?
See, as a clinician, as we were discussing before this, I have definitely seen a significantly lesser number of patients and the pressure on our
Yeah,
systems reduced significantly. And very, very few patients who have been double vaccinated are actually coming into hospital, even though they are having infections. That is for sure. But comparing one to the other might not be right, because we don't do genomic studies regularly. We don't know if our variants and their variants are more or less the same. But as far as the area that I work in, which is Kolkata, that I can see,
yeah.
and overall in the country as well, what we can see talking to my friends, our numbers have definitely come down just to a ripple from a wave.
Yeah, it's not so bad as it was in the second wave, where we were more than 4 lakh cases a day. Now it's 40,000. Of course, there are reports that there could be a third wave just round the corner. But as you were saying, those are ripples, and we would be witnessing them in the times to come. It will take some more time for things to really subside. But of course, I taking on a broader point, I wanted to ask you, Govindraj, when this whole thing started, when COVID outbreak happened, at that time we heard a lot about vaccine diplomacy. India started supplying vaccines to other countries, and then suddenly we were in the midst of this devastating second wave, and all of that started. But do you think this issue, putting a country in red zone for some time, then putting it in the amber zone, of course, when we got Covishield vaccine here, and there's no clarity about its clearance. Do you think it also has the potential to create diplomatic, some sort of a problem between the two countries, UK and India? Of course, there's so many Indians who would want to go to UK, students particularly for studies.
So as I think about it, it's really it's really your perception of risk. I mean, so remember,
Yeah,
Germany has opened,
yeah,
Spain, if I'm not mistaken, is open, Switzerland is open, and Iceland, of course, was mentioned. So these countries are allowing Indians to come in
yeah,
with Covishield and Covaxin.
yes,
You know, So now the thing is, Germany believes obviously that it can manage the risk, assuming, let's say,
Yeah.
100,000 people come from countries with similar
Yeah.
risk profiles as India, and for
Yeah.
some reason they're not able to catch it despite the tests and everything else.
Yeah.
Then they feel that they can manage it. England may feel that they cannot manage it. I mean, assuming you have a similar load of travelers, and for whatever reason the
Yeah.
virus suddenly starts spreading, maybe they feel that their public health system is already too strained. So I think
Mm.
it's I think it boils down to really perception of risk. And
Yeah.
up till a point, the United States was very open, but
Yeah.
suddenly it
Mm.
decided that it was not going to go down that path and has shut down.
Yeah.
Though, of course, shutting
Yeah.
down hasn't helped, because the United States is now back to almost 100,000 cases a day because of
Yeah.
internal, let's
Yeah.
say, lack of discipline and lack
Mm.
of vaccination. So I think this can be also a diplomatic issue, as in, I'm sure the UK, the Indian government would want to lean on the UK government and say, why aren't you doing this? UK government may say that the vaccine that's manufactured in India needs to get a specific approval
Yeah.
as opposed to get the generic approval that's
Yeah.
already there. And maybe that's in process. I don't know. But I think it's at a much larger level, it is a management of risk and a perception of risk profile. I think that's really what drives it. I mean, there's nothing else. I mean, everything else is secondary in my mind. See, I'm in Mumbai. Trains are still not open, unlike Delhi, where you are,
Yeah.
where everything is
Yeah.
open. Movie halls are still shut. Restaurants shut at 4 p.m. in Mumbai, even today. Malls are still not open. Okay, it's only 3 days ago or 4 days ago that they've allowed shops to open all day. That is beyond 4 p.m. Until 3 or 4 days ago, shops had to shut at 4 p.m. All shops except essentials. So it's risk. I mean, for whatever reason,
Yeah.
people in this city or my city are far more scared than the city of Delhi, for example, and maybe Kolkata as well.
Yes, Dr. Sumaiya, the perception of risk. Obviously, for some countries it's okay to take the risk. For some countries who want to step back and wait for some more time, do you think caution is important, as UK has done, that you have to have 10 days of quarantine till there is more clarity and things really improve on the ground? It's not such a bad idea.
Absolutely. I mean, perception, I mean, I agree there it is about perception from Mr. Ethiraj, but perception is not created overnight. It have to, it has to come with a long process of, the government subsequently investing time and efforts into
Yeah.
making people believe about the reality of how the science works, and why is it important. For example, Australia kind of kept at a lockdown. Originally belonged to Australia, and they've always
Mm.
been in a lockdown thinking of an island mentality, and that cannot work
Mm.
anymore because the zero COVID rate is never going to be a problem. We just have to live with the situation that this is going to be a part of our life. And now putting everything in such a strict lockdown where you can't even go out unless you're a part of the important like workers or critical workers, and now giving Pfizer, because AstraZeneca was just sitting there and nobody took it. As a matter of fact, the people in the UK always took AstraZeneca, and now they're about some 58% people vaccinated, and even more for a single dose. I think the perception really is about how the government manages a, the pandemic, but b, also its people, and the threat and around COVID, and how important it is. In our country it is very difficult because of the different problems in general about population, about the people living conditions there. Sometimes they're very cramped. There's no other way but to explain to each and everybody at a local level, at a public healthcare level, at medical institutes, that this is what you could do and this is what you can't do. But overall, I think just publishing some of the stuff from the Covishield would make a huge benefit. And also Mr. Ada Poonawalla, I saw him. He put some money aside for these people,
Yes.
but at the end of the
Yes.
day, everybody in the world knows how vaccine was dealt with in India. I mean, after the Anvisa report from Brazil, things are a little shaky with the Covishield side, and also in Saudi Arabia recently, I found out that the people were asking the Indian expats were asking themselves to be revaccinated with the Covishield because Covaxin wasn't being approved for them. So we've got all these issues, and I think what really need is very persistent release of data, real world data that we're doing well from day one. This is how many we vaccinated. This is how many infections we have. Good serology and extensive genotyping in particular. Because yesterday I seen the data where on the JISAID website, which is basically like a consortium that manages this type of genetics and epidemiology and stuff like that, and that tracks the variants in particular. That UK had a huge proportion of the Delta variant, about 99%. US had somewhere between the mid 80s, 84 to 85%, but India was showing around 70 to 58%. And I was wondering what was that other? We have all the other variants, and there was like a huge proportion of other variants completely hollow. We don't know that, and all of these things kind of create this insecurity that what else is there in India that we don't know about. And the mean deposition days to you deposit like each of those sequencing was around 60 days or so, 64 days from my memory. It's too much, I would say. That's a really long period. People need to genotype and sequence a lot quicker and put the data out in public. I think it should be every week. I can understand resources are low, but we need to do this as much as possible so that not just Indians, but also people in the world recognize how important the kind of work that is. I mean, it's not a joke to vaccinate so many people at the same time, but we need to, show what we've done instead of like hanging on to these, problems around the vaccines that we are facing.
Yes, 7.6% of the population was vaccinated in India till about a few days ago. But Govindraj, I also wanted to ask you that this is such a complicated issue, as Dr. Was telling us right now. There's so many things involved in it. I was talking to a student, he couldn't join us, but he told me that suddenly the airfare has gone up. It's 3 times more now because all those students who were stuck here are now planning to go there. And even if it's just a move from red to amber, they're still okay with it. And suddenly the airfare has gone up. And then they would have to be in the quarantines. Mr. Poonawalla has set aside some money, but again, it will incur a lot of cost. So all those things, do you think there is, on one side, there more needs to be done to communicate about the vaccine and to have those publications out? But on the other hand, these issues also need to be looked into, because suppose suddenly UK says, okay, all is fine, we'll lift all this and it's green zone for all of you, then suddenly there'll be a huge rush, and that will be another problem. Yeah, if you can unmute.
I think Dr. Shaikh has described it pretty well. I think we have a data problem in this country, and we don't trust this data, and therefore you cannot expect people outside to trust this data that easily. And I'm not saying this is that there are nefarious forces at work. I'm just saying that we've not got our data collection and data assimilation and data synthesis across many areas. I mean, it could be jobs and GDP on one end, and in this case, it's about genome sequencing and the periodicity. And many epidemiologists have pointed this out. So, I mean, how do you expect someone to trust you and open their gates to you if they're not sure? They want to, or they want you, they want your tourism, they want your dollars, but at the same time, there is a risk, like I said. So, therefore, the risk that you're taking is saying that, okay, I'm going to allow people in, not knowing fully to what extent or which variant is floating around in a country like India. So that's a slightly higher level of risk than just saying that, okay, I have all the data and now I'm taking a measured risk about who I'm allowing and not. So I think the data is something that we have to address. I mean, things are a little better now, but to build trust in data, I mean, for others to have trust in your data for any aspect of life takes time. You can't just say that, oh, I've cleaned up everything and from tomorrow all our data will be. You talked about Kerala. I mean, everyone is saying, okay, so why does Kerala have so many cases and half the cases as India now, and the rest of the country doesn't? So is the rest of the country concealing it or suppressing it, or is it not being captured, or is it that Kerala is over capturing? So we don't know. I mean, I've spoken to epidemiologists in Kerala, and they're saying we don't have an answer. So, and no,
Absolutely.
people don't have an answer because there's not enough data.
Yes, and Dr. Sushmita, you are on the ground. Of course, you know what's the situation there. You say that there has been a drop in the cases, but we're seeing different. We're seeing variation as is reported in Kerala. There are more cases, and in some places there are less cases, and we really don't know what's happening in the interiors, where mostly our work and focus is on the urban areas. What's happening in the interior, rural areas? Can you give us a sense of situation on the ground?
Yeah, so I basically work for a tertiary care hospital which is again, it's not a public hospital, but even my colleagues who work in the medical colleges, where people from very quite rural areas also come, their pressure has also decreased. The problem is that we don't work when a patient comes to us. We don't know which variant we are dealing with. It's just the
Yeah.
patient and their clinical symptoms, and variants are not tested for us to know whether this area has these variants or those areas have those variants. Two people from the same family can present with very different kinds of presentation because of how the virus and the patient react to each other based on that. So, from what I can gather, there are certain areas where lots and lots of people, especially post vaccination, who have had COVID infection, a lot of them have not needed to come into hospital. A lot of them have got better at home. Very few patients who are coming into hospital these days are the ones that are double vaccinated. And I think, as Dr. Sheikh was saying, we need to get our data together for what's happening to people who've had vaccination and what's happening to them post vaccination, and what is the results from that we need to put out. Because as clinicians, we don't know which variant we are treating when the patient comes to us.
Well, clearly, it's such an issue that we can speak on. We can speak on for hours on this, but we really have to wrap up this show. We can only hope that people are vaccinated. A majority of the population is vaccinated soon, and all the restrictions are lifted as far as international travel is concerned. Thanks so much to all our panelists for joining us for this show. Thanks so much.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.